Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Wednesday. I'm Paul John Dykes, and look at the lineup we've got for you this afternoon. It's John Hughes and Paddy Sinnott. Always a pleasure, Paddy. You pop in and out. You're a busy man. One or two things to talk about. Even though we go into an international break, John, there is loads to discuss. How did we get to this point, John, of having such a successful football club on the park with domestic success, off the park with all the money in the bank, and for the fans and the board to be completely dysfunctional together? We cannot communicate. We want different things for the football club. How did we get to this point?
Well, we got to that point because I think I mentioned the other week, the transfer model, the only bit of the transfer model they're interested in is the first bit, the buying and the selling. They don't care about then doing anything with that on the park, which is why we've got a ridiculous amount of money in the bank. Genuinely ridiculous, for the size of business that we are and the possible threats that you face. It's an utter nonsense. And now they're saying they can't spend all of that. So their focus has always been stripping the team for parts and then trying to start from zero and find another Matt O'Reilly, or get another Jota deal done, something like that. That just emphasises how lucky they are. The problem is they've had some lucky breaks, and those lucky breaks have led them to believe that they're good at their job. We said before, signing Ange on the back of the Eddie Howe debacle. To me, Ange was the only person that could have gotten us out of that mess with his contacts in Japan. No, I don't think Eddie Howe would have done the job. So lucky. And then, signing Matt O'Reilly when Riley McGree didn't sign, Jota getting signed by the Saudis. These were all incredibly lucky breaks, but it's led them to believe that can be done on a regular basis. And anyone with any common sense knows that is not the case. That's not the case. There's a reason no other successful club in Europe runs a business that same way. Our peers, the clubs that we're always comparing ourselves against, who are much, much better. Bruges, for instance, been mentioned multiple times. Took in 70 million, spent 50 million. Look at them now. All this sort of thing. So, we just have our eyes on one part of the business, and the rest of it apparently doesn't matter. It certainly doesn't matter to this board, and I think that is now, without the minutes coming out, just from that meeting, I tweeted or posted the day before. I expect absolutely nothing from this, because you don't go from releasing an AI statement briefing against the manager, right, and completely denying all accountability or responsibility for anything. You don't go from that to holding your hands up and singing Kumbaya with the fans. 10 minutes later, it's just not. It's not there. I expected the placatory words that were sent out in Celtic statement, but not in the fans statement. That I expected those words, well-crafted words from a PR company. That's what I expected. I was surprised I didn't see them, but then I saw them when Celtic's statement came out. So obviously, straight away, we've got an issue there. And I expected them to offer a review of some description, but they didn't even do that. It's the oldest trick in the book, is just to say, we understand how you feel. We're very sorry that you feel this way. And you just keep doing stuff like that. Not saying we're wrong. We're very sorry you feel that we're wrong, is what you would normally get. And then you would have that followed by, and of course, we'll have a review and the results of which shall be discussed with the fans in 6 to 10 years, time. Again, that's exactly what I expected. And we didn't even get that, so I don't know.
Well, you're right, John. And I think what actually happens here is there's always this fear, Paddy, of Celtic being in a position where we have strength, obviously, on the park and in the bank. And I always go back to it. I say it's a PTSD from 2012 or even 1994, where there's a fear to push on. There's a fear to push on. Just the stadium's 40 bits, but you know what? It will do the now. Let's not have a vision. And, yesterday I met up with Steve-O from the Celtic World Order, who did that brilliant video, the walk around, and he followed it up on his own channel. So we sat down and we spoke for an hour, a deep dive into the state of the stadium. There's one massive big thing that the club should not only be aware of, right? They should be actively, Paddy, sorting out a plan for the future. Now, if there is a reason why we can't rebuild the main stand, right? Tell us what the reason is. Tell us what it is. Is there something underneath? Is there something with the foundations? Tell us what it is. Or are you just not prepared to push on? But if you can't do that, what about everything else in the stadium? What about the footprint of the stadium? So we were talking about that yesterday, Paddy, and it's a lack of vision for me. It's a lack of vision, a lack of ambition. It's complacency, it's laziness. All these things we've been talking about on the show for 8 years.
I mean, I need to pick up on what John said at the start about Celtic are only concerned about buying and selling players. They're not even concerned about buying players, John. They're only concerned in selling them. It's the quality of player that they're looking to buy, which I think concerns them at the costly amount of money. So I get your broader point, but I just think that should be made. They don't really care. And looking at the summer transfer window, that's completely obvious about how they handled that. But going back to the stadium, I mean, see if Celtic came out and said, we're not spending money in the team because we're going to do X, Y, and Z to the stadium or X, Y, and Z to the Celtic. Well, you can understand that. You can say, do you know what? Fair play, what we've got now we'll do until such times where we can invest even more money in the team. But I'm not even doing that, Paul John. And there isn't really an excuse not to do up the stadium, because see if you look at clubs like Bodo Glimt, I think Bodo Glimt are building a brand new stadium at this moment in time. They got to the semi-finals of the Europa League last season. I think their capacity is like 8,000 in their old stadium, but they're building a completely brand new one. And then you look at Norwich as well, Norwich City, who are sitting in the Championship. They're completely revamping the outside of their stadium as well. Their concourses, I'm pretty sure they're doing some work on the stadium as well. There was a good video on it on social media. I should have kind of had it up in front of me. It shows you exactly what they're planning to do, telling the fans, this is what we're doing with the money, X, Y, and Z, and it looks great. How the Celtic Board can't do that is beyond me. I mean, and I hate to hark back to what's happening on the other side of the city, but look at the communication for that club. Look at the shambles they're in, telling their fans exactly what they're doing to help resolve the situation at Russell Martin. They've come out and said, sorry, we've got this wrong. There was no airs and graces. But our board can feel completely unable to do that. And it's baffling, absolutely baffling. So for all the points that we've raised, there's no excuse for Celtic not to invest in the team properly, to invest in the stadium, and to just come out and talk to the fans. And I think even if they said sorry, like John, even if they apologised for what happened in the summer, apologised for hamstringing the team, apologised for this carry on with Brendan Rodgers and the Sun, then that would probably go a long way to placating a lot of fans. It wouldn't heal, but it would definitely kind of open up, I suppose, more groundwork for more dialogue.
You know, there's a lot of really good comments coming in, and a few that I'm going to bring up so that we can discuss them. Let's just say that, John. The first one I'm going to bring up is Don WTR, which just rolls off the tongue. So thanks for that, Don. The problem here is the consequence of having college dropouts and art school wannabes, not sure which one you are, John, run these fan forums. They have helped undermine the club they claim to love. Go to your next fad, you charlatans. Now, I was a big fan of the Charlatans, particularly the third and fourth album, John, right? But I don't know who he's referring to here. Who's he referring to? I've seen a lot of this. I've seen you pesky podcasters. I mean, listen, I'll tell you something, right? All the board apologists have been smoked out, John, haven't they? We know who they are.
Yeah. Smoked out and enhanced. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit like the Israeli tactic of giving $7,000 to influencers for each post.
Did you read that? Did you see that?
So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you know, if they'd offered me $7,000, you know, I could have told them how much I admire Benjamin Netanyahu and what a lovely fella he is.
But John, you'd have done
I wouldn't sell out
with a cigar, and everybody would have known. And then you could give the money to the Palestine fight.
You could have done it with that background on your screen as
exactly.
well.
Yeah. Anyway, no, I mean, it's, you know, again, you don't take the narrative is controlled for the large part on social media. So you're obviously going to get a lot of pushback on social media once you start employing people to do that. And you're going to get comments like that from clowns like that who talk about undermining the club when what you're trying to do is prevent the club being undermined. We had a fan base before, a large percentage of whom were happy to see the club go into oblivion. Would have let the club go to oblivion because they refused to protest the board. They refused to take action against the board because they thought they were right. And idiotic comments like that should be called out and put in their place exactly where they are. We are the fans, and we are the ones seeking the best for the club. And we do not. I'm not an art school dropout, unfortunately. I never made it into art school. But I have run a business for 30 years. So, from that point of view, I would like to think I've got enough common sense to see where the issues might be within a company, given that's sort of my job. So, I don't know where that's coming from, but what I would say is that the fans' podcasts, for the most part, are populated by people who want nothing but the best for the club. You may disagree with them, but they want nothing but the best for the club. I disagree with many of them. I disagree with some of them. We
disagree on the group, John. We disagree all the time.
Absolutely. And I disagree with some of the more extreme things that I've seen. And there has to be some common sense applied. But for the most part, that's what you get. You're not really getting people asking for extreme actions to be taken. People, even what was asked for in that letter wasn't a lot.
No.
That open letter, it was hardly a lot. It was just like, here's some questions, can you answer them? The answer to that is no, we can't answer them, or we won't answer them because when Paddy was talking earlier on, he said it's baffling why they won't do it, but it's not baffling. The reason they don't do it, they won't tell us the plans, is because then they're immediately accountable for those plans, right? And they will not accept any level of accountability. That's why we don't have a vision. That's why we don't have plans, because they just do not want anyone saying, you said that was going to happen and that hasn't happened. So explain that, right? Who's accountable for that? And that's why it's not happening. They are very, very happy in jobs where they're in. The non-execs are there for sort of 20 odd years. I saw a thing the other day saying Peter Lawwell had taken some like £15.5 million out of the club in the period that he's been there.
That's all up to 2021, John.
Yeah, God, yeah, good point.
So whatever's had up until then will be extra.
Yeah. So, it wasn't long after he arrived on the board that suddenly the non-exec salaries and chairman salaries were doubled and trebled. I'm sure that's coincidental. But, the point remains that there are guys there who are very, very comfortable. They know what they need to do to keep their master happy. That's what they're doing. It doesn't matter what we think. It just doesn't matter. They don't have to answer to us. They answer to Dermot Desmond. Peter Lawwell is the Dermot Desmond whisperer, right? He was the longest serving CEO under Dermot Desmond. He knows exactly how to play him, and that's what he does. That's exactly why we are where we are, because our voices are irrelevant unless there's going to be some direct effect on the bottom line. And then, once you start attacking the bottom line, will you get their attention? Will people have to pay attention? Yes, they will do. But the chances are they'll pay attention, and the way they'll respond is cutting budgets.
Yeah.
So they won't respond by saying, listen, you're right, we should maybe look at this again and maybe appoint a director of football with, executive privileges and a budget which is pre-arranged, doesn't have to be signed off every single player. There's your budget, 20 million, 30 million, including transfers, whatever, and away you go. Do your job, right? That removes all of this. All of this then is removed from them and put on him. And the only reason that wouldn't be happening is because there is no budget. The budget is as cheap as you can make it. That's the budget. There is no figure agreed. The manager, I would love to hear from Brendan Leaves if he comes out and says, if we ask a question, what was your budget? And he was like, I've no idea. Because that's what he was saying earlier on about what transfers are underway, what's going through and what's not going through. I don't know.
I know.
You know, I mean, it's so poor on every level. And it's difficult not to be frustrated. It's difficult to focus on the football because it is so toxic and it annoys you so much. And as I said last week, it is very much like being in an abusive relationship. You know what I mean? You're staying for the kids and that's it. So, you know, it is really, I find it sort of unpleasant at the moment because nobody likes to be treated with contempt. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes to be dismissed. Nobody likes that, right? And that's what they're doing. They're dismissing us and treating us with contempt, right? As an entire fan base. And you cannot expect people just to suck that up. I'm sorry.
No, John, you're spot on. I'm going to run through some of these points. The first one being my art studies only did last for 1 year, John. So maybe he was referring to me. But can I tell you, right, part of my folio for art college was a design of a Celtic away strip. So I was an anorak and a geek even back then. And I've actually got it down there. I drew it on a picture of John Collins. It was a belter. And I'm saying that because you are wearing the most recent belter. Here we go, right? Some interesting points coming through. The Urban Culture, stick to the 7 demands. Right. Aye, absolutely. That's a great start. I think as well, what we'll be talking about on this show and for the next 4 or 5 weeks on This Is Acsom are some of the bigger pillars. I've already raised the stadium. The stadium is something that, you know what, you could continually increase your inbuilt advantage over anybody else in Scottish football by improving and increasing the stadium. Now, I remember when we got word that at a fans forum they had confirmed that there had been a study put in place, a survey rather, and there was a price of around 100 million quid, and it would only increase the capacity up to just under 70,000, I believe. But what it would also allow you to do is increase the corporate boxes within the stadium as well. And I found it really interesting a few weeks back, Willie Hockey confirming that there's 3,000 on the corporate waiting list, the hospitality waiting list, never mind the 10 to 12,000 on the season ticket waiting list. Yet, you know, we're not willing to just push that envelope, and this is the lack of vision and ambition. And I worked it all out at the time, Paddy. This is before you either do a share issue or you get a bank loan and you finance this way. If you were to actually work out how long it would take in terms of revenue just for the bums on the season ticket seats and the match day revenue that they generate, I worked out, and this is on the back of a cigarette packet, got to watch my American customers, and it was 17 years, right, to make that money back. However, that wasn't including naming rights. It wasn't including hospitality, corporate boxes. It wasn't including other big finals that rebuilding the main stand would allow you to then house, as well as concerts and all this kind of stuff. Now, it takes me back on the word of concerts and the fact that we're all charlatans on this show, apparently. When we appointed Don Mackay, now, this is the guy, right? I'm not going to hold Don Mackay up like as some kind of a Derek Riordan figure that becomes messy because he doesn't get a game under Gordon Strachan, right? But Don Mackay came in, and at least he was a CEO, Paddy. He was a CEO. And as I say, in terms of specifics, I can't get into the specifics until the minutes of the meeting on Monday are released both by the club and by the Celtic Fans Collective. But what I will be doing today is we'll be inviting a representative from the Celtic Fans Collective on for the last part of this show to give us an update on where we are with the minutes and what's going to happen next. But can you cast your mind back, Paddy, to that first press conference that Don Mackay did with Ange Postecoglou, right? And I'm telling you, right, we were invited as Acsom. It was the first time we'd ever been invited to the football club for anything. And that was down to Don Mackay, incidentally. And he phoned you up personally and invited you. There was a human touch. There was that buy-in straight away, right? Now, what I seen on that stage when Ange was being unveiled to the Celtic fan media compared to what I seen on Monday was two ends of the scale. I'm talking different planets, Paddy. Because that's what happens. Whatever happens with Don Mackay, we'll never find out, I don't think. But that's what happens if you appoint a CEO with a track record. And we don't have that.
Aye, exactly. And I do remember Don Mackay coming in, because I remember watching that press conference thinking it's something I've never ever seen before. I've never seen Celtic fans getting a chance to open the floor being open to question fans. Sorry, I'll start that again. I've put my teeth in. before we went up to Celtic fans to ask a manager any sort of question. And I don't ever think that's ever happened in my lifetime at all. And it was refreshing. And even the type of questions that have been asked, the CEO and the manager, was so much better than what you get fed from the mainstream media, which is the usual journalism nonsense of injuries and updates and transfers and all that kind of nonsense. It's actually fans want to know what's happening with the club. And it's a shame that didn't last. And like you said, and that correct me if I'm wrong, Paul John, but I think that's slowly been eroded away since Mackay left. I mean, I remember when Mackay came in, there was loads of fan meetings. There was schedules set up to who could come. I think you were allowed 4 visits a year, something like that, and there was plenty of fan media allowed to come over the course. 67 Hill here was one of them. We've not had a thing for the club for about 2 seasons now. We've not been invited to a press conference for a while, and I think we actually reached out to the club last year, but never heard anything back. So that seems to have been slowly eroded away, which is a shame, because I think press conferences are so much better with the Celtic fan media there. They offer so much more insight because they're asking questions fans know as journalists. But yeah, I mean, and I want to go back to what that guy said about the people on the fans forum. I mean, like you, Paul John, I'm just a Celtic fan as well. I suppose I looked into this job where I get to write about Celtic as a full-time living, and I love it. We speak for the voice of a fan. At least we put our head above the parapet, unlike that faceless YouTube account in there who comes on to try and hurl insults and take the moral high ground. So, aye.
What I would say though, Paddy, right, it's maybe a good time actually to share a wee bit of information with you guys. You two already know this, John, but this shows you that you used the word contempt, and that was the word that was swimming around my mind as I drove back to the wilds of Fife, back to 4 channels on the telly and no Wi-Fi, and I'm driving home thinking to myself, contempt. And this is a team, as I say, and it's not cliche and it's not trying to curry favour. I can never remember my life without Celtic, John. I just can't remember it. I mean, you know, sitting in a house in an estate in Fife where your entire family life is around your old fella going to the game on a Saturday, your cousins are going, your uncles are going. Just that, you know, it's always been there. It's omnipresent, right? So, as Paddy was saying, Celtic fan who lucked out. I wrote a wee book back in 2010. It was released in 2013, and it started a ball rolling, which allows me now to talk about Celtic. I'll tell you what, anybody who's given that opportunity, John, wouldn't say no if you're a Celtic fan, right?
Yep.
But what's happening now is there's a campaign, I would say, and it's through this contempt that you mentioned, John. There's a campaign to undermine and discredit guys like Paddy, discredit guys like me, who now have a platform, if you like. So 2 things have happened, and I might have mentioned this already. When I used to do the Wander in Paradise, which was the first indication that I seen myself that the stadium really was looking tired about 2 years ago. I was approached on a Monday morning just after 8 o'clock by an employee of Celtic who's been employed at the football club since 1989 and was told to go and get a proper job, you sado. And I was at Celtic Park filming an episode of A Wander in Paradise. So I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing or hearing, John. And I didn't even know who the individual was. I wouldn't speak to anybody like that in the street. Anyway, and by the way, you're on the footprint of Celtic Park at the time. Just by chance, someone who was with me knew exactly who it was and told me their name. So I emailed them, because it's easy to figure out what somebody's email address is once you've emailed somebody at the football club, John, right? So I emailed them and I just said, oh, by the way, I think we met this morning. Just as an introduction, because I didn't get a chance to get your name, just as an introduction, blah, 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 blah. And this is an email from a Celtic season ticket holder, John, not from someone who hosts a podcast, not from anyone other than a Celtic fan. A Celtic fan, that's it. And my point was, you don't speak to Celtic fans like that. That's ridiculous that you would do that. Anyway, I thought to myself, maybe it's a one-off. Maybe it's not a cultural issue. And then the other week, one of our team was up at the press conference and there was a jibe from one of the media team at Celtic, whereby it was in relation to the money being made off of Celtic by Acsom, right? And it was a disparaging reference, and it was made in front of a group of people so that they could all hear it. And my name was mentioned by an employee of Celtic Football Club. This is what we're up against, John. They will try and discredit you. They'll try and pull the rug from under your feet. They'll try and put a story out there that these are rabble-rousing for clicks and all this kind of stuff. I've seen it firsthand. I'm pretty sure Paddy's seen it as well. But going back to your point, John, instead of saying, right, how can we build relations with these guys? Because they're not going away anywhere anytime soon. What they'll try and do is discredit you. Rather than build relations with you, they'll try and discredit you. Rather than try to improve the content that's coming out on the Celtic media channels, they will try and find somebody who's watching it on a Fire Stick. You know, it's a bizarre outlook in terms of growing the business, isn't
it? Yeah. I mean, God forbid that you should control the narrative by actually speaking to people. If you don't like what's been said about you, say something, right? Yeah. So if you don't want people talking about you in a particular way, then get out there and get your message out. So you cannot sit in silence, sniping at people, and just hope that that changes something. It doesn't change anything, and it won't. All it does is make things worse. So you're deliberately trying to destroy relations with people who could be helping you. If Michael Nicholson wanted to come on to any podcast, you'd welcome him with open arms. Tell us what the crack is, Michael. Do you know what I mean? And the same with Chris Mackay or anyone else on the board that wanted to come on. You would give them airtime and let them talk and let's have a conversation about what's happening. But no, and I'm not just talking about coming on here. Go on telly, go on Celtic TV. You don't even do that. And so to be attacking, that's when like the one that was in the comments earlier on, if you're attacking us as the problem, that is, for a fact, that is divide and conquer. That is a strategy, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to put a wedge between the people who want the best for the club and the people who are actually making money out of the club, and not a few quid, millions and millions and millions and millions, And so, to any sort of comparison there is just madness. The problem is not podcasters or Celtic fan media. That's not the problem. All they're doing is reporting what's happening and giving an opinion on it. They can't report on stuff that isn't happening, right? So if these things are not happening, you can't just make up and say, the board said something that they didn't say or whatever it is. So the board are actually in control of this if they wanted to be, but they don't want to be because, again, they don't want to tell us what they're doing because they don't want to be accountable. It all comes back to that. It all comes back to accountability. They don't want to be held accountable for anything at all. So, and that includes the media relations, but it is the old style here, and this is to me, has the Lowell fingerprints all over it. The attack on using the PR company and attacking and trying to divide and conquer with social media is the same as the Sun article. It's that same attempt. It's exactly the same thing. Attack, divide, create division, create hatred, create a narrative of suspicion. There's people working against it, but it's not the board. And it's deflection as well, because if we're attacking each other or you're attacking the manager or whatever, it's deflecting from them. So these are well-trodden paths and well-tried tactics, and, it has worked for them to this point. So I don't know if it's going to carry on working for them. I certainly hope not. I certainly hope we're mature enough now and we're annoyed enough now and we're aggravated enough now that we will not be deflected from the ultimate goal, which is to achieve tangible change.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm going to use that. I'm going to pick up your point there on the Sun leak, what happened there, John. And I'm going to throw this to Paddy because, Paddy, you've been working in the kind of Celtic blog space for a long time. And the traction that your particular site that you write for gets on a monthly basis is huge. So we can't just say, it's a wee blog that nobody reads. It's massive. The coverage that site gets is huge, right? And when you're talking about mainstream media now, or legacy media, as it's been referred to, I've said before, in 5 years' time, there will be no term. It will just be media, good or bad, right? And in terms of their story going out or 67 Hail story going out, you are both going to capture a huge audience. So I'm going to throw it to you, Paddy, right? If you were to target a Celtic employee, be that Brendan Rodgers or Peter Lawwell or anyone else, in the way that the Sun created that story, right? If you were to do it, would the club come for you? How would they deal with you? Would they just say to the board, right, who did that? Nobody puts their hand up, case closed. Would they do that? Or would they come for you more robustly? How do you think they would approach it?
Well, they have done before, Paul John,
A
few years ago, about a story I'd written, not for 67 Hill Hill, it was for a different Celtic blog at the time. And they didn't like what I'd written, and I received communication from the board to say, that's not right, you need to fix it. So, and going back to what John said about this Sun article, well, it looks like you can write whatever you want, John, because the board are denying anybody went to the Sun to give Roger Hannah that story. So either Roger Hannah's made it up or someone at Celtic's lying. Now, if Roger Hannah has made it up, why has no one from Celtic contacted the newspaper to deal with that, like they would do with Celtic bloggers? Because
it's a mystery. It's a mystery, Paddy. One which is unsolvable. I mean, let's be honest. It's so complex that we couldn't possibly solve it.
This is the thing, right? So before I like I said, looked into writing about Celtic, I worked as a business manager for a successful company, and it was like a franchise company, and I pretty much dealt with a lot of the kind of internal discipline parts of it, and you had to do proper investigations. The investigation has to be neutral. There has to be two sides of the story taken, and the outcome has to be based on facts. So what was the facts it's presenting to Celtic? What did Celtic find out? Who conducted the investigation would be the first question I would ask, because that will tell you how the investigation went in the first place. The second thing I would say is, who was spoken to by the club? Who did the club speak to in relation to this story? Did they speak to any employees at Celtic, or did they speak to somebody at the Sun? Did they speak to Roger Hannah to confirm it? And then thirdly, how did they come to their conclusion if they've not done any of that? And if it's not a neutral person who's conducting investigation, how can it be viewed with any credibility? So to me, the whole thing stinks. It doesn't sit right at all. And that was the first thing when the Celtic Fans Collective released a statement on social media yesterday. That was the first thing that jumped out to me, was how Celtic handled that leak to the Sun. Denied it, said the matter's closed, and that was it. I mean, that's incredible. Like you said, Paul John, if I'd come up with that hat-trick job against Brendan Rodgers, I would be hauled over the coals, not just by Celtic, but by the company I work for as well. Yeah. So there has to be, and you can't just make stuff up, because as soon as you start doing that, your credibility's out the window. Now, you look at Roger Hannah, and you can have a gripe about who he works for in regards to the Sun. A lot of football fans don't like it, but Roger Hannah's a professional. I'm pretty sure a guy has experience and his time in the journalism game hasn't just cut with that story willy-nilly or ad hoc. He would have double-checked his facts, double-checked the source, made sure it was all right to go. I would assume he would have even contacted the club, because hell mend him if he released a story like that, not contacted the club for a comment. So, yeah, I mean, the Sun story, I think that's one that's never going to go away, despite Michael Nicholson dismissing it as being done. So it'll be interesting to see if anything else comes out for it. I actually tweeted Roger Hannah yesterday to ask him what he thought about Celtic's response was to that story, and I've not heard anything back yet. So I'm hoping we'll get something back for Roger, because if I was him, I wouldn't be very happy.
No, well, this is the thing in terms of credibility of your profession, Paddy. I think we'll all have a view on the publication that he writes for. But here was the Celtic Fans Collective paragraph on it. The allegation of a senior club official briefing against the manager to the Sun was described as closed by Michael Nicholson. The club was unwilling to divulge much information, although claimed a conversation took place between the board and the manager. The club suggested that the allegation was unsubstantiated. And as John says, that's because we never investigated it and did not require further investigation. In conclusion, the collective expressed disappointment that the club remained unwilling to engage meaningfully on questions of leadership, governance and accountability. We did an interview the other week there with Cal McIninch, fantastic Scottish actor whose name you might not recognise, but his face you will. And he plays Tommy Sheridan in the ongoing ITV 7-part drama called The Hack. And even if you just watch the first episode of that with David Tennant in it, right? Is it Toby Jones, I think? It shows you how a story runs in the Guardian newspaper about the news of the world, hacking, right? And the loopholes involved in that were unbelievable. So going back to what you said, Paddy, you can't just print what you want.
No.
You know, in terms of corroborating stories, you've got to make sure that sources stack up. You've got to make sure that, you know, if you're taken to task, you are able to answer all these questions, even if you're protecting your source.
I think I've told you plenty of times before, there's been plenty of stories going about Celtic that we've refused to write because the people that it comes from just aren't credible, or the sources that come from is credible. So you can't write everything you read, or you can't write everything you hear. It's got to be plausible. You've got to be able to back it up, or else you risk losing your credibility and obviously getting not fingered by the law. But you understand what I mean, right? So you've got to make sure everything you write or everything you say is nailed on, and that you can back it up. So yeah, I mean, I seen a comment in there for one of the listeners saying, or one of the watchers saying that Roger Hannah isn't going to kind of reveal his sources. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Roger Hannah must be, or if I was him, I'd be fuming that the board have come out and said this, because it makes him effectively look as if he just made the story up. I'm not asking Roger Hannah to reveal his sources. I'm asking him to comment on what he thought about the story or Celtic version of events in that story. So that just thought I'd way.
Well, you know, I mean, obviously, I mean, what they didn't put in the response there was a big boy did it and ran away. So. You know,
were you at the meeting, John? Were you at the meeting? Did you write that down verbatim at the time?
No, I mean, if it wasn't a board member, who was it?
I know.
Right? Are you seriously saying you don't know how to trace these leaks? Is that what you're saying? Because I'm pretty sure Dermot Desmond could find out pretty damn quick if he wanted to.
Well, I mean, a senior Celtic source tells you who it is. It gives you a good starting point, John. A senior Celtic source.
Yeah. So
everybody at the club knows who it is. I mean, let's be honest here. Everybody knows who did it. Everybody knows who did it.
Yeah, and you know, but you know, this is you're not going to believe this, having done investigations, Paddy, yourself. Sometimes, if you ask someone if they did something, if they have reasons not to tell you, they won't tell you the truth.
Yeah,
this, you know, this is a revelation for many people, I'm sure, but. You know, it is plausible that somebody lied, you know, and what's more likely, that someone on the board protecting their position lied, or that the journalist just made up this massive story right before that statement came out, you know, with the timing of it and everything else as well. And as you know, as you said, the dog in the street knows who did it. It is so laughable that they're just not even, countenancing any sort of investigation into, not even pretending to investigate it. We asked all the people, you know, we went to prison and asked all the murderers if they did it. All of them said no, you know. So, no, unfortunately, we still have a load of corpses, and it can't be any of these guys. So, you know.
See, the thing with it, John, it's just grotty. It's really just a grotty way to do business, you know.
Yeah.
As a Celtic fan going up to the stadium and getting spoken down to like that, I'm talking about the original thing where I was doing the wonder, followed up by a few weeks ago, these comments basically trying to bring into question my credibility as well in front of loads of other people. That's just grotty. That's not the decent way to do business. That's not the way that Celtic should be conducting business. And I find it really interesting. I knew the answer, Paddy. I set that one up for you. That Paddy Sinnott will get communication from the board, almost a threatening, communication, whereas the Sun gets off scot-free. Unbelievable, but there you go. Tony Kenner, you're in on the YouTube. This board are at minimum guilty of gross negligence with regards to our club and everything that goes with it. There should be no more dialogue until they're removed. This is what they've got, though, in their favour, John, right? If I went to any shop, regardless of how long I'd been shopping there, right, and I was a customer, which is what they think we are, right, and I walk into a shop and somebody spoke to me, not once, but twice like that, with that level of contempt, I would not set foot back in that shop. They know this is different, and they use that to their advantage, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's almost difficult to draw any other comparison, because there is no business you would ever return to being spoken to that by a board, via a statement, via further statements and further meetings, or by general attitude or by members of staff. You would never go back. But they have the advantage of, and as someone that wrote that statement the other day put it very well, they commodify our passion.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives them a huge advantage, and they know it, and they don't run themselves like any other business, because the customers cannot hold them to account the same way, because the customers aren't going to stop doing what they love to do, and what is a lifelong passion for them. They're not going to stop it because someone was horrible to them. They're just not going to do it. But that then builds in again into the arrogance of them thinking they can talk to people any way they want and dismissing us any way they want, because they are at least partially correct, or for the main part is the fact they're correct. We are still here talking about it. None of us have gone off this podcast and said, never again, that's an outrage. I'm never coming back. So it's the same with the people in the comments. Nobody is throwing the toys out the pram to the extent they're saying they're never coming back, which means they're guaranteed to get at least some of our money. Maybe, fortunately, I've already bought enough merch to last a lifetime, so I can go on a strike without really any impact on being able to wear Celtic gear. But I mean, people are doing these things reflexively, right? People are not buying merch, as far as I understand it, already because they're annoyed. They're really peed off, right? People aren't turning up at the games, despite the fact they've already paid for the tickets, because they don't want to watch the football on offer. It's too much hassle, and they don't like being treated with contempt. And I said that before. They might have the money, but they don't have the full seats, and they don't. And this is the other perfect illustration. They have created a situation where that stadium could be basically empty and they'd have sold all the seats. But because they're so incompetent, they can't even do what they do in GAA, which is work a seat transfer system. Right. But other people could go at the game, right? And you're talking about an amateur sport which can do this via Ticketmaster, using Ticketmaster. So you can transfer the ticket, you can resell all the tickets. That stadium the other day could have been full with people that can't get to games, but yet they are so arrogant and incompetent they can't even organise that. And if you're getting out-organised by GAA, who are basically doing this as an amateur sport, then you are in serious breach of your responsibilities. You're not doing your job. But the problem is, Celtic, if you were to ask that question, who's to organise that? Well, I don't know.
Oh, we'll look at that. We'll look at that, and we'll come back to you in the next meeting, John. Yeah. That's what we'll do. Aye, one of the ones.
We'll conduct a review, and again on the same timeline. It's farcical that they don't even have that organised, and not. Think of the extra money that would come into the club and be returned to the fans. If you can't make it to a game, they sell it, they take the majority of the money, right? Or they take at least half the money, and you get half your money back for a game that you can't attend. Everybody's happy. Everybody's a winner. The stadium's full. You've got half your money back. The club have got 50% more money for a seat they've already. How can you not organise that?
It's a no-brainer, John.
I believe they've been doing that for about the last 18 months, have they not? Aberdeen have been doing that, I'm sure.
This is the thing, the systems are all, it's not as if you're asking a developer to create a new system.
No, it come in and make up an app, I know.
Aye. And I think a club like Celtic, right, and with our heritage, which is so important to us, and the foundation and the work that we do for charitable means, which has to be always focused on, right? Imagine being able to go into Ticketmaster and saying, right, I can't make the game, there's my 2 tickets, and have the option, Paddy, do you want to gift them to an underprivileged group of people? Do you want to gift them to the Kano? Do you want to gift them to the unemployed or a minority within the Glasgow community? Because I'm pretty sure most Celtic fans would click that rather than sell them, 100%. Because this is the thing. And it's all there. The systems are in place. It would just be a case of someone within Celtic doing a wee study on that, do some research, and then tap into it. Now, I know that everybody is itching over the last couple of days to get updates on the meeting. So what we decided to do is we're going to bring in Martin from the Celtic Fans Collective in just a second to bring us right up to speed as to where we are right now and where we're going to go next. Because obviously everything was kind of on hold until the meeting as such, because we don't know the outcome of that. And now we know the outcome of it, we can talk about next steps forward. So welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. And here we go. There we are. Martin, how are you doing, mate?
How's things? All right?
Brilliant. Excellent. Great to see you twice in a week. Great to see you. And on Monday, there was I think myself, when, turning up for the meeting and stuff, there was a real feeling within the group going into the meeting, a feeling of unity. We all went into that building and you were kind of hoping, and I've said to you before, I'm not used to being in a room with representatives from the club, but you were hoping for the best. And the whole purpose of you coming in today is because, understandably, loads of Celtic fans are itching to find out as much as they possibly can. So give us a wee update on where we are with the minutes, when we expect to be able to release them.
I think when I spoke to you about coming on here, Paul John, I hoped that we would be able to publish minutes and we could then go into it in full detail. But we're just still just waiting on them being signed off. Ideally, we can have them signed off by both parties. The very latest is we've sent over our version of minutes to Celtic within the last couple of hours. My suspicion is they might not agree to all of that. So we'll see where we are over the next few hours. So keep an eye on their response. Ideally, by tonight or tomorrow morning, we can have sort of full minutes published for everybody, because I know there's obviously a lot of interest in this. The overview and what you've covered, I was listening in there, has been pretty accurate. But I appreciate minutes will put sort of further meat on the bones there. So we'll do our very, very best to try and get these agreed and released as soon as. So we're not sitting on them or anything like that. So.
The big thing that I would say, though, on the back of that, Martin, is this was a kind of late Monday night meeting, right? Everybody's there voluntarily. People are travelling from all over the place. We don't have a professional minute taker. People are putting in their hours and all the rest of it in and around their home life and their work and all that. So it's no disgrace that we're sitting here and the minutes aren't produced. It's just that Celtic fans are obviously wanting to hear what's been happening. So well done, and I want to underline this, well done to everybody, Martin, who has got us to this stage in such a short space of time. It really has been remarkable, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just before we wrap up on the minutes thing, what I would say is they are going to be really sort of full. So, the minutes will be done in total fullness and they'll be professionally distributed and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully it is worth the wait. You could have rushed it, some sort of rehashed attempt or whatever, but we're going to get sort of good full established minutes out within the next 24 hours anyway. But yeah, listen, it's been a really great effort. It's been 5-6 weeks or so, so we're still very, very early days in. It was a really great effort. As much as the outcome of the meeting the other night was, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, was disappointing. I thought that the collective themselves and the representatives there really articulated themselves really, really well. There's a bit of nervousness from me in terms of the numbers, and obviously everybody's passionate about it. So could it have turned into a bit emotional? Could it have went a bit rabble? But it was not like that at all. I thought everybody conducted themselves really, really well. Nobody was out of order or anything like that. So for me, as much as like I say, there was a lot of disappointment leaving the room, there was also a lot of hope there that actually, we've got a really good foundation. I think what was clear to take from it is that change is not going to happen over the short term. That was confirmed on Monday night. So what we need is a real strong foundation to build on that's going to last the test of time. And I actually think that we've got that, and we've got plenty to build on. So we'll meet again as a wider collective next week. It's really important to get a really good turnout and get loads of contributions from everybody. And then, like I say, we'll take that into what's being sort of called phase 2 of the campaign.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question, Paul John, actually, of both of you? I meant to ask this earlier. I'm assuming that the meeting was recorded and that's what the minutes are being based on. Is that right?
So both parties, John, at the minute takers, we had somebody who has pulled together minutes from our perspective, and the club had someone from their legal team taking minutes from their perspective. So we've sent over a version, they've sent over a version. We've since amended that this morning, sent it to their head of legal just before lunchtime today. So I'd expect a response this afternoon. I think both parties appreciate the urgency behind it, so quite keen to get it turned around. But equally, they've got to be accurate and full.
And did they object to a recording being made, or was that asked?
I don't think it was actually asked. I think I don't. This is just a personal thing. I don't think it'd have been wise to do a recording, because I think they would have automatically went into like safeguard mode and would have probably held back. And I don't know if you get the full benefit of a meeting. So I think they would have been, just knowing sort of the characters we're dealing with, I think they'd have been really nervous about that. And it maybe, I suppose it was a bit of a waste of time in the end anyway. But I don't know if we'd get much out of it that way.
You know, the other thing as well, you're talking there about change. One thing that I took from it, and this is just a general point, is that if nothing was to be done by the Celtic fans, there will be no change. That this is something that they will not come to that conclusion themselves. They will not figure out that maybe that's not right, and maybe that's not right, and we need to do this differently. That is not in their makeup as far as I'm concerned from what I see.
So I walked in, I honestly feel that, and I've dealt with the club in different capacities for a number of years and different people for a number of years, but I walked in feeling pretty optimistic that we were going into something different, and I almost feel really embarrassed about that, to be honest. But I did feel, I was like, there's no way we've been invited in to have essentially a rehash of what the affiliation and the association got a month ago, so they must have something up their sleeve. So I started sort of questioning, is it going to be a director of football, a new, professional modern football model? Is that going to be coupled with a new fan engagement model, which is sort of taking us into even the 21st century? Is it going to be like a fan advisory board going to be proposed? We're going to discuss how that would work. But we just get none of that, and it was just completely deflating. And I went home honestly Monday night feeling like Celtic just lost a cup final.
Martin, can I just say, if you've got a few quid spare, I have an excellent investment for you. There's a bridge I just need to get rid of, But no, I'm slagging you, but obviously, of course, that is a perfectly reasonable assumption. And I heard loads of people in the background saying to me, don't be negative beforehand. I didn't think anything would come of it, but people saying, just let's wait and see what happens. Surely, there must be something. If people were hearing whispers in the background about the kind of thing that you're talking about. So, of course, you're going to get your hopes up. And of course, you're going to expect better than that. Why would you call a meeting to give you less than nothing? Do you know what I mean? It's bizarre behaviour.
What I would say is as much as it was really disappointing, it's still not a waste of time, because you can then go back to the supporters and say, look, this is where we're at. I thought with the scrutiny and the pressure and all that's happened over the last month, I thought that it must have been really getting to them, and they would have really thought to themselves, we need to instigate real big structural changes here. But actually, I just saw people who were entirely comfortable in their roles and, fully confident in the work that they've done. So, what my understanding was throughout September was, this pressure's building, this is we're really building something. That's not what I witnessed on Monday night.
Yeah, I'm going to bring Paddy in here, because obviously Paddy spends 23 and a half hours of his day writing about Celtic, reading about Celtic. Paddy, so from the outside looking into this, you look at Celtic fans' collective output compared to the Celtic statement, and you must be thinking, was there two meetings that night? So what's been your take on it, Paddy?
Just utter disbelief about how one meeting could have two so very different versions. And I just think that, and I just think going to that meeting, I don't think anybody should feel embarrassed, because getting Celtic to the table, feel embarrassed hoping for something better, because getting Celtic to the table is hard enough anyway. And the fact that they agreed to come to the table, I was even kind of thinking that's good, because at least they're now engaging with the fans, and then obviously that part of their statement where they said they always continually look to engage with fans. Getting them up to the table alone was a feat in itself, and that happened in a matter of weeks. So I just feel as if until we see all the minutes of the meeting, we won't get a true picture. But I'm getting the feeling for what you two guys are saying, we're going to be looking at two different meetings here. We're going to be looking at two different versions. There's going to be three stories. There's going to be our story, their story, and what actually happened. And I think what actually happens, we're going to be closer to our story. If I'm honest.
I suppose this is where the high numbers come in, because I don't think anybody certainly sitting at our side of the table would disagree with the overwhelming feeling of the collective and the representatives there. What would say is, I mean, they did technically say it never went how they went. So it never went how they hoped in the summer. So there was already an admission of that anyway. But that wasn't the overriding message. The overriding message was everything's okay. We don't need to change. We'll do a review, but it's looking like we'll get into January with the same stuff. So that was the overwhelming message. There was a small admission. So I'm not saying that what they released yesterday was a lie, because there was a small admission that hadn't went the window hadn't went as exactly how they hoped. But the overriding message was everything's fine. We're doing a good job. It's status quo going into January, and we'll just expect more of the same for years to come.
But that's how the statement came across. That's exactly how you described it. That's how it came across. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I took for it anyway, at least.
The cynic in me suggests that they probably said that it never went to plan just for the benefit of the minutes, and then moved on to
that's why I was surprised not to see it originally, because that's the bit that I fully expected them to say. That's the bit that I really expected them to say. That's come straight from the PR company, read it straight off the thing. So we acknowledge the club is not where we want it to be at the moment. Where do you want it to be then? Right? We've not achieved all our objectives in the summer transfer window in the Champions League. What were your objectives in the summer transfer window in the Champions League? I'm pretty sure people would have been asking these questions as they went along, and mistakes have been made from which we will learn. What mistakes? What have you learned? Do you know what I mean? We recognise the concerns raised and share the frustrations of the. And how are you recognising those concerns? And what frustrations is it you're sharing? And you value the opportunity to hear from supporters. Is that right? Aye. So
Paul John will testify that any time we honed in on examples, the response was always, we can't go into to specific examples for confidentiality reasons, which is fair enough to an extent, but anytime they're sort of honed in on or asked for example stuff, they just totally duck the question.
Yeah. But I mean, you say, fair enough to a certain extent. How is it fair enough? This is public business being conducted, right? They're trying to sign guys. You don't need to say, you don't need to tell us the numbers involved or whatever, but you say, well, why did that fail? Why didn't you get that done earlier? Oh, because, well, confidentially speaking, your man's a clown and we can't get the job done. So, what do you mean, though, by saying, oh, we can't go into specifics? Tell us why you didn't get the deals done. That's not, just even generally, that's not specific. You know what I mean? That's a general. Tell us how we got to this position where before the Kairat game, we haven't signed a body. We haven't signed a striker in 18 months. I mean, the list goes on and on. You know it as well as I do. All the things you can list out just to say, saying there, oh, it's all confidential. Utter nonsense. Whose confidentiality are you actually breaching?
If they answered anything that you wanted to answer, the question you want answered there, point the finger to one or maybe two people. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's important also. It was important also to note that as much as the transfer windows have been repeatedly shambolic, it's far from the only issue that has led the Celtic Fans Collective to form in the first place. It was a catalyst, and I think that's important to note. But there's issues right across all areas of the club, which, their objective is apparently to be world class. But really, when you look at the stadium, the training ground, the recruitment, the fan engagement, the pitch. None of it is even remotely close to world class. In fact, you're far closer to mediocrity than world class. So, like I said, the transfer window's been the catalyst, and clearly that's what a lot of fans are emotional about as well. But we've also got to keep in mind the bigger picture as well.
Yeah,
it does seem that we're more likely to discover multi-dimensional space where we are world class in one of those dimensions than it does that they're actually going to do something.
The frustration for me, John, is every time we get to a point that maybe isn't world class, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, we regress, and it's almost a deliberate regression. One final specific question around the statement that came out yesterday, Martin, was the Sun. There's a paragraph in the statement from ourselves about the Sun, the leak. That was one of the most astonishing responses that I think I heard all night, just the way that they dealt or didn't deal with that. And I think that shows you just how weak they are, really, Martin, when trying to protect the club and an employee of the club. It was astonishing.
It was really, really poor, to be honest. They've put in, when they said about an investigation, the investigation amounted to, and this is Chris Mackay's words, asking the board members if they'd done it, and the board members said no, it wasn't me. and that was genuinely what was said.
Oh man!
And then he elaborated a wee bit further and said the report actually said it was a senior official, so it might not have been the board. So that was the extent of the investigation. I saw, especially young guys, being banned for Celtic Park for pyrotechnics or other relatively small perceived misbehaviours, and the effort that the club go into to finding these guys and banning them was about 100 times more effort than they've put into what happened with that report and the disrepute.
That's a brilliant point. That's a brilliant point.
You're spot on, because we were talking about something fairly similar where they've gone for Paddy for printing something on his website, Martin, you know, but they're no going for the Sun. But they've gone for Paddy, an independent source, a Celtic fan, and they've given you more heat, Paddy, than the reporter in the Sun or the newspaper himself have got. So that's really frustrating. If you could wrap it up today, Martin, because there's obviously going to be more conversations moving forward. Wrap up today with just a reminder of where we go next in terms of the collective. So
there'll be a meeting next week with the wider collective, and all the signatories will be invited to that again. So just a similar meeting to what happened in Gracie's last month, which was hugely successful, and we really sort of tapped into the passion and the emotion and the support. We're just looking for the same again in terms of what the steering group kind of called phase 2 in the next campaign. I think it's quite clear that, you know, this is going to take a bit longer than maybe certainly what I expected. I thought we could really get change quicker, and like I say, maybe I was naive, but we're going to need to build something really strategic, really planned, and critically for me as well, this isn't a single issue group, it's not a single issue campaign. We want to drive change for the betterment of Celtic and Celtic fans for many, many years to come. So there's loads of evidence of similar across even British football. There's a real sort of gap in the market for Celtic fans. We've sort of been hung out to dry for too long, and hopefully this changes that. So meeting next week, we'll take the views of the wider support, and we'll build a strategy based on the feedback we get there.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Martin. The work that you and the rest of the troops have done is unbelievable. So thanks everybody for getting involved today. 2,500 strong. As we sit here on a Wednesday afternoon, all that's left for me to say thank you, John Hughes, Paddy Sinnott and Martin from the Celtic Fans Collective, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.